I am glad today to welcome Professor Israel Knohl.
No.
And you recently published a book called Messiah Confrontation. And could you please take us to the concept of the Messiah as it's described in the Bible? And how actually this idea came out to the world, and who opposed it and who supported it?
Well, the meaning of the Hebrew word Mashiach, Messiah, is very much connected with olive oil. It is connected with the ritual, very ancient ritual, of pouring oil on the olive oil on the head of the king or high priest. This custom is known to us even from a literature which predate the Bible, from northern Syria, uh, the writings of Mari in northern Syria. And the idea is, why pouring olive oil? When you pour olive oil on the head of somebody, his face starts shining. And the shining face are a symbol of supernatural, superhuman dignity, because the divinity is assumed to have glory and light surrounding it. So by pouring oil on the head of the king, you give the king a status of a semi-divine person, semi-divine person. This is what we can gather from the traditions which are older than the Bible, probably were brought by Abraham, or the population represented by Abraham, from northern Syria to Canaan. And in the Hebrew Bible, first, the anointment is connected with persons who are representing sanctity in both spheres. There are priests, high priests, who are anointed, and this is mainly in the book of the Torah. And we hear about the anointment of king. Already the first king of Israel, Saul, was anointed by Samuel. And David was anointed by Samuel, and Solomon, etc., etc. So this is something which is basically connected with the current king, not with a future person or future expectation, but with the current ruler, either of Israel in the northern kingdom or in Judea. And with the anointment, we see also other motifs which are taken in order to elevate the status of the king to a semi-divine status. He is called the Son of God. This is in Psalm 2, probably in the older version of Psalm 110. He is promised to have eternal life. He has divine wisdom. So all of it, and we see it mainly in what we call the royal Psalms, the Psalms about the king in the book of Psalms, are together an effort to take the personality of the king and transform it in a status of a semi-divine being. He is not regular being. He is semi-divine, and this is the reason why you have to respect him. This is the reason why in no case you can hurt him. We see it in the stories of Saul and David when Saul is going after David, and David finds him either sleeping or going to the bathroom with his trousers down, and he can kill him. He is advised David to kill him and to get rid of the fear and of Saul. And he says to his people who advise him to get rid of Saul, he said, no, no, he is the Messiah of the Lord. I can't kill him. He's sacred. No way I will hurt him. And at the end of the life of Saul, when a Amalekite person came to David and said, oh, I was near Saul when he fought the Philistine in the mountain of Gilboa, and I saw that he had a stroke. He couldn't move, and he asked me, please kill me because I don't want the Philistines to catch me and to torture me. And well, Saul asked me to kill him, so I did what Saul requested from me, and I killed him. And I brought you the some of his ornaments as evidence that I killed Saul in his command. So David immediately kills the Amalekite person. He says, oh, you said yourself, I killed the Messiah of the Lord. I have to kill you because you hurted the Messiah of the Lord. This is irrational because, Saul was asking. He did a favor of Saul. Saul was not tortured by the Philistines because this person killed him a moment before that. So, the logical, rational mind would say he should get a payment, a medal for saving Saul from the humiliation of being captured and tortured by the Philistine. Instead of this, David killed him. Why? There is irrational sanctity connected to the term the Messiah of the Lord, and no way you can't hurt the Messiah of the Lord. This is the essence of the story about the last day of Saul.
So actually, in the ancient Near East, this is a normal thing to the resemblance of the king as some kind of divine person or divine nature, and his rule is divine. And
Yes, even though the anointment is not everywhere in the ancient Near East, it is limited to northern Syria and the Hittites, but the admiration of the king as a semi-divine being or as a full god is, as you say, Alex, it is common in the ancient Near East.
like Egypt, for
Yes,
example.
Egypt is the most clear example. The Pharaoh is divine. He is worshipped as a deity, and there's no question about the divinity of the Pharaoh. In Mesopotamia, it is coming, I would say, in a less strong claim. The claim of the divinity of the ruler in Babylon and Assyria exists, but it's not that clear as in Egypt.
Could you please, Professor, elaborate more on the expression "son of the god"?
Okay, let's say the expression son of God we see it in Egypt, usually in cases where the status of the pharaoh is problematic. For instance, I will give you two examples. Hatshepsut, the lady that ruled Egypt in the 15th century BC, she was appointed as ruler of Egypt for a limited time because the real hire of the chair was very young. So they said, okay, you will rule for a few years. The son of the Pharaoh, who was not her son, he was the son of a different woman, he will get to the proper age, and then you will have to give him the chair, the throne, and he will be the pharaoh. But she fell in love with the offices, happened many times to politicians, and she did all effort to present herself as legitimate pharaoh. She was a woman, so there are symbols and icons of her with a beard, with a typical beard of a pharaoh. She also published in scripts and in drawing a scenario where Ammon, the chief god of Egypt, came to her mother and fertilized her with his semen, called in a metaphoric language. I am Hatshepsut. I am the son of God. So this is supporting a shaky status of the king. Another example is at the end of the dynasty of Akhenaton. Hammurab, who was the last ruler from this dynasty, he was not from the royal family. His only connection to the royal family of Akhenaton and his father was that he was married to the sister of Nefertiti, the beautiful wife of Akhenaton. So he was a brother-in-law of Akhenaton. This is not really enough to become the pharaoh. So he again told and published the story that he was created by intercourse of one of the gods and his mother. So it is a method to, I
We
would
would say
say,
today establish authority.
establish authority when a shaken throne is having, shaking status. In my view, and I've published an article on this, it's called Politics and Religion in Psalm 2. In Psalm 2, where we have the most explicit statement about the sonship of God, God told me, "You are my son. Today I have created you. Today I have begotten you. You are my son. Today I have begotten you." This is Psalm 2. What is the beginning of Psalm 2? Psalm 2 starts, "Lama ragshu goyim u'le'omim yeheguri kal Adonai ve'al Mashicho." The nations are talking about the Messiah, the king. They are subjected to the Judean king and they want to rebel against him. So this is another case where the status of the king is in a problem. There is a rebellion of some nations who were subjected probably to his father, and he is new on the throne, and he is afraid of the rebellion. So the psalm is saying to these rebels, you have no chance, because the person you want to fight against him, he is the Son of God. So also here, I believe that the term Son of God is used in a political situation which is problematic, in order to support the claims that you should not rebel against me. I am the Son of God. Anyhow, I would say the whole package of divinity of the monarch is foreign to the original Israelite nation, because the original Israelite nation in the period of the judges was not ruled by kings. God was the king. There were the judges who were not kings. So it is only in the time of Samuel, because of the pressure of the Philistines, that the people came to Samuel and say, please appoint to us a king who will rule us like all other nations. We don't want to go on with the army of volunteers like we did in the time of Deborah. It was nice for the Canaanites. Now we have a serious army, the Philistines. They are well trained in war. We need king who will take taxes, establish army, serious army, trained army. We want to have it like all the other nations surrounding us. So we see clear that they want to borrow a political form of government which is foreign to their tradition. They want to imitate the nations. So I say, when they imported the very essence of kingship, with it they also imported the idea of the divinity of the king. So this is not original
So it's not
Israelite.
in a tribe culture of Israel tribes.
Yes, that's true. It's not connected to the early situation of the tribes of Israel in Canaan from the 12th century to the 10th century. Iron period one, what we call in archaeology. It did not exist there. It came with the establishment of a kingdom in the time of Saul and David in the 10th century BC. I think this is the time where the very idea of kingship is imported with the whole package of royal ideology, meaning the claim for the divinity of the king.
So what we have talked so far, we are in the reality when there is a concrete person who is called Messiah. It's a king, in some cases it may be a judge. But when this concept evolved to some future king or savior to come and save Israel.
Okay.
Israelites.
The point in history where we have the change of the term and the expectation from the present king to a future figure, in my view, connected with Isaiah, son of Amos, and with the political situation in the 8th century, because around the year 733 BCE, there was a war, or a plan of a war, a threat of a war which coalition of the Aram, Syria, and the northern kingdom, Israel, both of them together, wanted to attack Jerusalem. And their plan was to capture Jerusalem, to take out King Ahaz, who was on the Davidic throne, and to replace him by another person.
He is mentioned by the name
Tova. Yes, probably a person from Transjordan, where we later would see the family of Tuvia, probably. So Ahaz was very afraid. And Isaiah told him, don't be afraid, trust the Lord. The Lord will help you and you will get rid of them. They are nothing. But Ahaz refused to trust God. He said, trusting God, this is nice theologically, but I am a practical man. I have to deal with real politics. I have to look for a strong supporter who will save me from Aram and Israel. Who is there in the area stronger than them? Assyria, because in that period, Assyria, with the king Tiglath-Pileser III, became the strongest force in the area of the Middle East. So he sent gold and silver to Tiglath-Pileser and said, I'm going to be your servant now. Namely, I am giving up my independence, the independence of Jerusalem that was established by David hundreds of years ago, and I'm going to be now a vassal king subjected to the Assyrian emperor. And this is what happened. And this was great disappointment to Isaiah. And he said, I have no expectations for this weak person, Ahaz. We have to look for the future. In the future, a son will be born to us, and he will be wonderful, and he will be like a mighty God, and his wisdom will be perfect, and all the great titles that we see in the beginning of chapter 9 of Isaiah. So Isaiah is saying the present situation of the Davidic family is terrible. I can't trust them. But in the future, God will save us and send us a better ruler still from the house of David. This is the birth of the messianic expectation, where the messianic idea is not connected with a current ruler, but with a future figure.
So the disappointment from the current ruler and expectations actually for the better ruler. That's the first time we see this
In
future
Isaiah.
Messiah.
Isaiah is followed by Jeremiah and Ezekiel in the Persian period, Haggai and Zechariah. We see it all the way. This is the birth of the messianic expectation.
But Professor, is this idea or concept is accepted by everyone, or we have here and people who oppose it?
We see a very serious opposition. As we say, the roots of the idea are borrowed from the kingdoms around us, and there are those, we see their voices specifically in the five books of Moses and the book of Hosea, who reject both the very idea of kingship. As Hosea, who lived in the same time of Isaiah, but in the northern kingdom, is very critical of the very idea of kingship. The Torah in the book of Deuteronomy gives some, I would say, the king there is a king, but he has no real authority in military issues, in in legal issues. He is a puppet king, I would say, the king of Deuteronomy 18. So the Torah is also basically negative toward the very idea of monarchy and kingship. But above it, there is also serious rejection of the idea of divine figure who is the king. According to the Torah, there should be clear distinction between humanity and God. Adam and Eve are sent away from the Garden of Eden because God does not want them to get the fruit of the tree of life and become eternal. So how can you say that the king is eternal? There are two psalms who say that the king was blessed with eternity. Isaiah in chapter 9, which we have mentioned, called the future king, future Messiah, Aviad, Aviad, namely everlasting Father. How a human being can be everlasting? It is God who is eternal and everlasting. You can't say about a human being that he is eternal. Eternity is kept for God. This is the great mark and distinction between God and humanity. You can't cross it. And you say that the king is a son of God? This is impossible. The basic idea, the Torah says, the basic idea of Israelite belief is the elevation of the biblical God above the biological process of being, of birth, of sexuality, of procreation, of death. Unlike all the deities of the ancient Near East, he has no female partner. He is not involved in sexual relationship, and he can't have a son. How do you claim that the king is a son of God? Who is the mother? How was a person born as a son of God if God should be elevated above the idea of procreation and fatherhood? So this is a very strong debate between two schools within the Hebrew Bible.
In fact, this argument which you just described between these two approaches to the idea of Messiah, till what period this discussion was going on?
Well, I would say that, first of all, in the Babylonian exile, it was a big crisis to the whole idea because the king, the Messiah of the Lord, was captured by the Gentiles. This is in the book of Lamentations. It says, Ruach apeinu Mashiach Adonai nilkad b'shchitutam. They've captured the breath of our nostril, the Messiah of the Lord. This refers to the last king of Jerusalem, Zedekiah, which was captured and tortured by the Babylonians. So this was a great crisis. Later on, there is a renewal with the coming of the Persian kingdom, but the question is, can you really expect a messianic Davidic ruler in the time when you are governed by the Persians? Deuter Isaiah, second Isaiah from chapter 40 on, he says, no. You know who is the Messiah? Isaiah 44:45. Cyrus is the Messiah. This is astonishing. He called Cyrus, the king of Persia, he called him Messiah, and he calls him my shepherd, again, another messianic title. And he says, Dr. Isaiah, the promises of David are taken from the house of David and are given to the entire community. So he gave up the expectation for a messianic ruler from the house of David. Unlike him, two contemporaries who lived in the Jerusalem at that period, who came back from the exile, Haggai and Zechariah, they are still expecting the renewal of the Davidic kingdom. The expectations are very much connected with the figure of Zerubbabel, who was a descent of the house of David. So, but they were still afraid because they were ruled by the Persians. The Persians would not allow a Davidic king. Cyrus is the king. And so we see some secret language like used by Zechariah. He speaks about Tzemach, the branch, as a title of the king. Somehow, and this is a mystery, Zerubbabel suddenly disappeared. We don't know. Was he dying a natural death? Was he killed by the Persians? Was he exiled by the Persians? But very early in the period, he disappeared. And with him, the messianic expectation entered a situation of a coma. For 400 years, nobody is talking about Messiah, about messianic expectation. Nothing. Only in the beginning of the first century BCE, we see the messianic expectation coming back to life in the Qumran community, the community of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They start talking again about the Messiah. And later on, the Pharisees are talking about the Messiah. When the Romans entered Pompeii, entered Jerusalem, desecrated the temple, uh, they start to speak again about the Messiah, expect the triumphal Davidic Messiah to come and defeat the Romans. These are the people of the Dead Sea Scrolls, probably the Essenes, and the Pharisees. However, there was a third group, the Sadducees, the priests who hold the administration of the temple, and they did not accept the idea, the messianic idea. They rejected both the idea of resurrection. We find it in the New Testament and Josephus, and in the rabbinic traditions of the Sadducees. Did not believe in resurrection, and we have no signs that they expected any kind of a Messiah. So there is a strong debate again in the last generation of the Second Temple period, let's say between 100 BCE and 70 CE, about the messianic idea. And in my view, the culmination of this debate is shown to us in the trial of Jesus. What happened in the trial of Jesus? Well, we have several versions in the Gospels. I will follow the oldest one, the Gospel of Mark, which in my view is the most reliable. And according to Mark, Jesus was brought to the house of the high priest Caiaphas, and Caiaphas asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" listen to the language. He doesn't say, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" Probably he couldn't even say the words, the Son of God. To say the Son of God for the high priest to follow the tradition of the Torah, which say, you can't say that God has a son. He is above paternity, above procreation. So he didn't want even to say the words. So he take a nickname, a title of God, the Blessed One. A title that is very much known to us. We use it in the daily prayer. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Bless the blessed God. So Jesus understood exactly what is the question about. And he said, according to Mark, I follow Mark. Yes, I am. And you will see the Son of God sitting on the right hand of power. So Jesus himself is using similar language. He doesn't say you will see the Son sitting on the right hand of God. He said, on the right hand of power, which means in Hebrew, Gvura, which is another name title of God. So using these titles, the blessed one, power, has a smell of authenticity and
So these vague terms, they are on purpose.
yes, I think this is a great support for the authenticity of the tradition that we see in Mark. So, what is the reaction of the high priest? He says to his fellows, did you hear the blasphemy? Did you hear the blasphemy? Namely, that this person say, I am the Son of God. This is a blasphemy. And he tore his garments as one who hears blasphemy. And he said, there is no question. This person must go to death because he cares God. This is blasphemy. This is what happened. So if you will come and ask me, Alex, according to the Hebrew Bible, who was right and who was wrong? Jesus or Caiaphas, the high priest? I will tell you, depend on which part of the Hebrew Bible you look. Jesus is clearly following the traditions of the Psalms and the prophets because he's speaking about sitting on the right hand of God, power, God, which is based on Psalm number 110, which starts in the saying of God to the ruler, come sit on my right hand. So he's quoting the Psalms, he's following the Psalms. He has an excellent base in the Psalm. How about the high priest? The high priest has an excellent base in the Torah. The Torah really see the claims that God has a son as a blasphemy. So both of them are right because they have a good basis within the Hebrew Bible, but in different parts of the Hebrew Bible. So this is the culmination of the old debate. However, what I would like to claim is that we have to be very careful about this scenario of the trial and to see when it took place, who were the members of the group the Sanhedrin that judge Jesus at that time. And this is very crucial, because the legal process took place at night. There is an inner debate, like I spoke about inner debates within the Hebrew Bible. There are also inner debate within the New Testament. There is inner debate within the New Testament with regard to the exact date of the trial of Jesus. According to the synoptic gospels, all of this happened in the first eve of Passover. Jesus was celebrating with his disciples the Last Supper, which according to the synoptic gospels, Mark, Matthew, and Luke, took place in the first night of Passover. It was Seder, the ritual, the traditional meal of the first night of Passover. However, according to the Gospel of John, it was a regular night, a day before the Passover. So this is a dispute among the Gospels. I'm not going to solve this inner tension. But anyhow, the major group of the Jewish people at that time, the leading group in issues of law, were the Pharisees. According to their rule, legal procedure of capital punishments cannot take place at night and not in the time of a festival. So there is a good reason why they did not come and took part. The process was illegal according to their views. Even if Caiaphas, the high priest, called their leaders, let's say Gamliel, was the chief authority among the Pharisees in this period, and said, "Oh, come, Gamliel, Rabbi Yochanan, the son of Zakkai," he would invite them, say, "Oh, no, we don't do that at night. Or if it was really Passover, we don't do that in the festival of Passover." So they didn't show up. And this, in my view, had a terrible result. Why? The Pharisees had many disagreements with Jesus. You go on in the gospel, you see they argue about purity, impurity, observance of the Sabbath, etc., etc. Many halachic legal issues. However, with regard to the messianic expectation, with regard to the belief in resurrection, they were in the same camp. They share similar expectation about a semi-divine ruler who will come from the house of David. They believed in resurrection. So, in the book of Acts, we have stories about two cases where the disciples of Jesus were brought before court with the claims that you follow Jesus and you believe da. And in both cases, the Pharisees rejected the Sadducees and say they are not to be blamed with nothing release these people. It happened first, and this is Acts chapter 5, with Peter and his friends who were brought to court, and the same Gamaliel, the leader of the Pharisees in Jerusalem, said, "Oh, you don't have to interfere with messianic expectation. There are different people with different messianic expectation. Release these people." And they were released. The same happened later when Paul was brought before court. He was said, he saw that there are Sadducees and Pharisees. He faced the Pharisees and said, "Fellows, we share the same view. Both of us believe in the resurrection. I was brought it because I believe that Jesus was resurrected." So, and they say, "Oh, release him." Let me be precise. I don't want to claim that the Pharisees believed in Jesus. They did not believe in him, but they shared a similar messianic expectation of a person who will be in a semi-divine status. Rabbi Akiba, who was the greatest leader of the rabbinic camp in the generation after the destruction of the temple, in the time of the Bar Kokhba rebellion, 132 to 135, he announced that Bar Kokhba is the Messiah. And he said, on the verse of Daniel, where Daniel 7, what it said, there are two thrones put in heaven. He said, one for God, one for David, namely the Messiah, son of David. So in his eyes, the Messiah, son of David, is sitting in heaven near God. And this is exactly similar to what Jesus said in his trial, that the Son would sit now on the right hand of power.
So actually, what are you saying is that we can speculate and assume that if the Jesus would stand for a trial in front of Pharisees, or at least the Pharisees would take part in the trial, he probably would never be crucified, and
Yes, and all
maybe
history,
no Christianity would ever be born.
I don't know about the birth of Christianity, but the animosity, the tragic animosity between Christian and Jews would not come out. We have to remember very always that the death verdict, that of course was not performed by Jews, but by the Romans, by Pontius Pilatus, the Roman ruler of Jerusalem. He crucified Jesus, not the Jews. But the death verdict that was pronounced by the high priest represents the view of very minor group who happened to rule the temple at that period. The majority of the people, and we hear it everywhere in the New Testament, in Josephus, followed the Pharisees. So the majority of the Jewish people would not stand behind this verdict. We have to remember it very clear. Vatican II said Jesus was not crucified by the Jewish people. I follow Vatican II by going into details to the whole process of the verdict and the roots of the debate to show that this is not to be put on the shoulders of the Jewish people. It was a very minor group who, again, I assume, did not want the life of Jesus, the person. They were afraid of their ideology. It was not, they were not so much interested to push Jesus away but to keep their tradition which they hired from the time of the Hebrew Bible.
Professor Israel Knohl, thank you very much for this fascinating explanation. Thank you.
You're welcome.